This is why you feel like you don't belong. I'm going to start with a brief summary of my experience with this because I feel like we all have a different definition of belonging based on our experiences, and in sharing mine, making this video, I'm hoping people watch it and find it's not too different from theirs. And if you don't give a hoot about any of that, then you can skip to this timestamp at the bottom of the screen. But first, let's go over the rest of the video. Afterwards, I'm going to talk about how we all belong, the meaning of the word belonging, the opposite of belonging, why you feel like you don't belong, the crux, the meat and potatoes here, and things you can do to increase your sense of belonging. Yes, just like any word, when you say it multiple times, it starts to sound a little weird. But let's get back to my backstory and provide hopefully some of my perspective. And again, if you do not care about this, please feel free to skip to the timestamp below. I never really felt like I belonged. When I was younger, I felt certain glimpses of this belonging, though, that I was yearning for every now and then. During high school, everyone has those friend groups who make them feel secure. If they need someone, someone's there. They think you're funny. They enjoy spending time with you. If you put yourself out there, they aren't going to judge you. And even if you feel like you embarrass yourself, they're there to help you pick up the pieces. It's a lot like what I hope we can all agree that being around family should be like. As I got older, and this is the part where it might get kind of confusing, I realized that the times I felt I belonged, I didn't. And some of the times I felt like I didn't belong, I actually did. My perspective just changed because so many of my feelings from my youth, they kind of internalized. And a lot of those things I just described, I started to feel inside emotionally, almost as if they were self-generated or something. I'm 27 now, might be 28 when this video is uploaded. This was about 6-7 years ago. And this was at the point in my life when I realized there's a difference between being alone and feeling lonely. And it's probably one of the most important lessons I've ever learned. But for the most part, I feel like I belonged everywhere I went. Anytime I didn't, I used my best judgment to determine whether or not it was really worth sticking around. If it didn't work out, it didn't work out. But that's essentially what I learned, and it's still a work in progress, of course. But it's worth noting that we all belong to something, and we all fit in somewhere in some way. You never really lose this 100%. There are over 8 billion people in the world. Some of them are going to be able to relate to you and connect with you somehow. No one knows everything. No one has traveled the entire world and experienced everything there is to experience. And you already know this too, I'm sure of it. No one has met everyone there is to meet because that's metaphysically impossible anyway. Even those multi-billionaires with the things that no one's heard of, the flying palaces and the Koenigsegg's, if that's how you pronounce it, and the Unitree H-12s and all that good stuff. Imagine having so much money you could buy groceries. Anyway, what does the word belonging mean? The word belonging means an affinity for a place or situation. What's an affinity? That's a word you don't hear every day, though. And this is where it gets interesting. An affinity is a spontaneous or natural liking or sympathy. I don't know about you, but to me, the words spontaneous and natural really stand out. Belongings don't feel forced, do they? They feel spontaneous and natural. When's the last time you felt like you belonged to something where you really had to force the glove to fit? This begs the question, how do you know when you don't belong? What's the opposite of a sense of belonging? Belonging is a unique word in that it has a lot of antonyms that have different meanings. I looked into this and the most common one I found was alienation. According to the Cambridge Dictionary, alienation is the feeling that you have no connection with the people around you or that you are not a part of a group. It all comes down to the feeling, doesn't it? All of these mention feelings, almost like the feeling that you spontaneously and naturally like or sympathize with the group, or almost like the feeling that you don't have that type of connection with the group. Get familiar with that feeling, whatever it is, it's worth paying attention to. Here's why you feel like you don't belong. There are two things that kind of stood out to me in my research here. One of them is childhood experiences. Belonging is important. When I looked into the impact child experience has on it, I saw a lot of the word neglect. People say that it can be attributed to emotional neglect as a child because when a kid feels like their emotions aren't that important, when they want to do something exciting and their parents tell them not to, when they're running around and having fun and they're told to stop, no one even asks them why it matters that a kid does those things. Which is crazy because all of it, we were all kids at some point. The most a lot of parents probably do is explain why it's important not to do those things. Here's why the way things are done in the world and society matters, and why what you want to do right now doesn't. That's what it sounds like. And then we grow up, we constantly tell ourselves not to do these exciting things. This is just a generalization, of course, of the way we behaved when we're raised like that. But is it true? I don't know. Does it describe you? I'd say it describes me, and I don't even think my parents did a bad job raising me. Can we at least agree that it makes sense? It can also be the way other kids treat us growing up. And bullying, and today is even cyberbullying, can put a dent in someone's self-esteem while their mind is still developing. The second thing was life changes. When you get a new job or go to a new school, move to a new environment, or have a child, or stop or start seeing someone, or experience a major health issue, there are a series of things you do every single day that contribute to your identity. These are your habits. They shape the results you get. They shape what you experience every day. And when you do these things every day, that's what causes you to feel comfortable. The repetition molds itself into the grooves of your brain. You know what they say, neurons that fire together wire together. Then you disrupt that whole thing and you replace it with something else. All of a sudden, it doesn't really feel like home as much. The flow of things gets disrupted. The more socialized this flow of things is, by the way, the more displaced you can feel when these changes take place. It can cause feelings of, I don't know, estrangement and alienation. But here are some things that you can do to increase your sense of belonging. Try focusing on others. This can foster connection, which lets us feel understood and valued, almost like we're part of the group, and it strengthens the way that we feel inclusion in a community. You could imagine how life changes and negative childhood experiences could cause someone to feel like their identity isn't very significant and their purpose isn't very impactful. Do some good, like volunteering, teaching someone something, holding the door for a stranger, saying you're welcome when they say thank you. Not everyone will, but that's the world. Giving someone a random compliment. It is shown to positively affect someone's overall sense of identity and purpose. The more people you impact and the more you impact them, the better. Opening your mind to the world. When's the last time someone tried to get you to do something new and you listened and you were pleasantly surprised with how it turned out? When you make people feel like they belong, they'll make you feel like you belong. Being closed off, it's not gonna help. Folks, I'm sorry, it just isn't. It isn't. It just isn't. I've done it, it doesn't work. Other people, you know, could probably say the same thing. Open yourself to other people, open yourself to new things, open yourself to new places, take pictures of new things that you experience and put them in an album. Look at the album when you experience feelings of loneliness. Do something to indicate that you're heading in the right direction, even if it's something small when it comes to opening yourself up to the world. And lastly is practice acceptance. This whole journey I've had of belonging really started with a book I had discovered just looking for answers to this thing we call life. And for anyone who's looking into the topic of belonging, there is a fierce, passionate author whose name that you will see time and time again, that at this point I hope to one day meet and give a bear hug. This author is Brené Brown, and the book is called Braving the Wilderness. I looked at Braving the Wilderness as facing the fears that I had living alone in a new city with no friends nearby, and brave the wilderness I did. So in terms of practicing acceptance, I'd like to close with this quote by Brené Brown. The truth is, belonging starts with self-acceptance. Your level of belonging, in fact, can never be greater than your level of self-acceptance, because believing that you're enough is what gives you the courage to be authentic, vulnerable, and imperfect. I strongly recommend checking out Brené Brown. She does a phenomenal job covering this whole topic in general, and many others that revolve around just emotions in ways that are not really all that scientific. But when it comes to belonging specifically, Braving the Wilderness fits the shoe. The shoe fits on Braving the Wilderness. The wilderness fits on Braving the shoe. The fitting shoes on the wilderness fit the brave. And Brené Brown bravely shoes this wilderness as she sees fit. Now, clearly this is a recommendation, but I do have a link in the description for this book, and if you buy anything through that link, then I get commission, which helps me build this channel and keep making these videos. For more information on this book and what it's about, I did a review of this book a couple years ago, and I'll drop a link to that review as well. But for a little bit more of a backstory, this channel is mainly dedicated to non-fiction book reviews, so if you can't tell, I wrote the end of this video a little unmedicated. Anyway, that's why you might feel like you don't belong, if that's the case. What are your thoughts on this? What are your experiences with belonging? Were you in a place at some point where you didn't belong, and are you still there now? If not, what changed it? Let me know in the comments below. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, make sure to smash that like button, subscribe if you haven't already so you could see a little bit more of the content that we're putting out here. And if you want to turn it up just a notch and turn on that notification bell to get a notification whenever I drop new videos, that would mean the world to me. Thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate it. You can find me everywhere, and I will see you then.